All right, so to put the dial indicator on, you're going to remove this screw and washer and attach it this way. Leave the rubber tip on and use a 3/16 Allen wrench to tighten it. Also, make sure that during shipping your sign plate hasn't moved. You want to make sure that you're all the way against these pins before you skim cut your chuck. So if you need to, loosen these 2 bolts with a 1/4" Allen, hold it tight against those pins, and retighten. Now to attach the arm to the surface grinder, remove all 3 bolts that are in the arm. You can slide this out now if you want to make it easier to handle. Now, this extra hole, you'll notice one side with the 3/4" hole has a tapped hole and the other doesn't. You want the side with the tapped hole to be facing down in this orientation. Once you have it in this orientation, you can get these 2 longer bolts started, but don't tighten them yet. Just run them in with your fingers until they take most of the slack out. And do the same with this shorter bolt from the bottom. Now, go from the bench to your grinder. Easiest to slide it in the vertical position. Don't worry about how deep you slide it in right now. You don't need to worry about that till we're ready to put a belt on. Get it locked down, and now we're going to put our contact wheel in. So with the carriage ran in close to your contact wheel, we're going to slide it in, and we're going to adjust it in and out until we're centered on this 2-inch raised face of the chuck. Once you're centered, we'll start by putting a little bit of clamp on this front bolt. That'll clamp on the spindle and keep it from sliding around. But now, once you have that one clamped, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna run the chuck in the rest of the way and adjust the angle until you don't see a gap on either the top or the bottom side. We're going to skim cut the chuck later to make it perfect, but this will get us close so that we don't have to remove more material than necessary. If you went too tight with this to where you can't move it, you can loosen it back up. Once these top 2 are tight, at an angle you like, and you can tighten this one, but make sure you go nice and tight on everything. You don't want anything to move on you later, or you won't be able to get parallel grinds. Now we're ready to skim cut our chuck. We usually use like a 120 grit belt. So now you can loosen this knob. Give yourself a little room to get a belt in here. And then slide it out. Just like other accessories, leave yourself a little slack before you tighten it. Release your latch to put belt tension on. Then you can flip down to horizontal. And you can move your dial indicator in to engage. Make sure your travel limits are slid out now so you can slide. And I usually mark the face of the chuck with a Sharpie or something so you can see which spots you haven't hit yet. The first time you do it, it'll be obvious, but if you ever do skim cuts in the future, it won't be so obvious which spots you've already ground, so the Sharpie helps. Start it up and take light cuts until all the Sharpie disappears. Anytime you feed in, make sure you're on the right side of the contact wheel. That way you're taking your heavy cutting pass in a pulling stroke and it's not running away from you. Pull at a consistent speed. To get a good surface finish. If you slow down and vary your speed throughout the cut, you'll get waves in your surface finish. I usually only feed in about 1 thou per cut on this wide of a cut. You may need to track your belt a little bit back and forth to make sure you clean up the entire width of that 2-inch face.